We've talked about how Iran's exported its Shahed drones to Russia for its war against Ukraine. Well, a powerful Russian facial recognition software has been acquired in complete secrecy by the Islamic Republic and put to use. It's our Spotlight segment. And we say hello to Alexander Abdullahi, investigative journalist at Forbidden Stories. Tell us, please, about FindFace.
Yeah, so FindFace, as you said, is a facial recognition software that is made by a Russian company called Lab. And what we reveal at Forbidden Stories in our investigation that was published yesterday, Eyes of Iran, is that the Iranian regime secretly acquired it in 2019. We obtained a data leak of confidential documents from Iranian and also Russian companies. And so what we saw is that the Iranian regime has that tool at its disposal that is a top-notch tool, much more advanced than what experts thought the regime had in its hands.
Give us a concrete example how, for instance, it could have been put to use back in January during the crackdown on those protests.
Sure. So this tool has actually two ways it can work. So the first one is what they call the offline mode. So you can just record videos on the street during a demonstration, for example, or use CCTV camera feeds, or also videos that people put on social media. And then you run it through that software, and that software actually has an algorithm that compares the faces that you see in the video with a database that you provided. So it could match, let's say, one face in a crowd with an identity thanks to AI and biometric data that the security apparatus in Iran has on most of its citizens. So it's in less, in a few seconds, it could compare one face in a crowd with millions, potentially hundreds of millions of faces. So it's very powerful, and it could help the security forces to identify every people on the street, even if they hide behind hoodies or masks in some cases. It's very efficient. So it could really, in the hands of an authoritarian regime such as Iran, be really dangerous for people taking to the streets and make it way easier for the security forces to go after them.
And some are wondering if this surveillance system that you've been describing for us, Alexander, may have been the undoing of the supreme leader. The Financial Times reporting how Israel had long hacked into Iran's surveillance cameras, its cyber unit using footage to pinpoint its moment of opportunity when Ayatollah Khamenei gathered senior staff at a defense compound on Saturday. These complex algorithms adding details to dossiers on members of the security guards that included their addresses, hours of duty, routes they took to work, and most importantly, who they were usually assigned to protect and transport. So is what you're describing what killed, in the end, Ali Khamenei?
So you have to differentiate between the CCTV camera feeds, so the images that cameras are recording, from the tool, the software itself, which allows to match faces. So obviously I'm not aware of the tool that the Israeli Secret Service is using, but one can imagine that it's probably a similar tool to that one that was used to be able to, to run a model on the images you get to be able to say, okay, this face, this person matches this ID from that database. But that's difficult to say. Forbidden Stories really dive into this story with our partners because our mandate is to pursue the stories that journalists have been trying to work on and have been silenced. And Iran is the perfect example for that, because in that country, there is no investigation possible. Every potential investigation is a forbidden story. And this tool is like one more tool in the hands of an authoritarian regime that silences people. Because if you are aware of the fact that your government can identify you when you're in the subway, when you're on the street, and arrest you the next day or the next hour without having met any policemen on your way to the demonstration or on the way home, it's really scary, and that's what we wanted to highlight. And also, name the companies involved, put names on that machinery.
And so the journalist consortium of Forbidden Stories, well, you got help from whistleblowers from inside of Iran. That's how you got tipped off to the story.
So actually the departure of the story is a data leak that we obtained. And in addition to that data leak that contained a lot of contracts and exclusive documents, we were able to talk to someone who knew the system from the inside and helped us check if what we found was in tune with what the person saw in the system. And we also talked to cybersecurity researchers, to people well aware of how the regime functions, like how it uses this kind of tools. And they said, I'm thinking of Nima Fatemi, which we talked to, interviewed. He said when he saw the documents, and he said, yeah, most probably the regime used the tool during last uprising because it would allow them to spare their resources. And instead of sending policemen in a demonstration, they could just, sit behind a desk, look at the images, run it through the software, get a list of people who were on the street on that day, and then just pick them up one by one at their home. So it's pretty chilling to imagine what it could mean in the hands of that regime.
And Iran is not alone. You just mentioned how Israel has its own system. And Alexander, I know you read the news. Last week you watched that tug of war in the United States between Silicon Valley giant Anthropic and the Pentagon. Anthropic saying it doesn't want its software to be used for mass surveillance. What was your reaction when you were putting the finishing touches on this investigation and watching what was going on in Washington?
Well, I mean, this investigation collided, let's say, with the news of the war breaking out in Iran. Of course, we were working on it already for a few months before we published. And I mean, the facial recognition is an issue that also Western democracies, let's say, are confronted with. Like, let's take the example of France, for example, where it's not officially allowed yet, but we know that some services are probably already using it. It's potentially dangerous when you connect it to databases containing private information of citizens. In itself, such a software cannot do anything. It's really the data you feed it to that makes it dangerous, and how you use that information once you have it. But yeah, I mean, the example in the US is one of the most recent ones where you have to, it's all the ethics that AI brings up, like all these questions of how far can you go when you want to provide security, how far can you infringe on private rights and fundamental rights? So yeah, that's a separate subject, but we try to focus and shed light on one of these softwares and what it means when these capacities are used in a regime that is authoritarian and is, perpetrating massacres against its own population.
Yeah, and one final question on this, Alexander. When you think of the Iranians who went out in the streets and braved bullets back in January, those that weren't killed or arrested, they've got to be looking over their shoulder now in light of what you're revealing.
So I think it was the case before. We saw a lot of demonstrators hiding their faces as much as possible, destroying CCTV cameras. So Iranians were aware that the regime was surveilling them. what we are revealing, and we hope this also helps the Iranian people, is how this specific software works. And I think it's important that people are informed, just to be able to, think twice about how to go at what they're doing. I'm not saying now that this software is active, you don't have to please stay away from the streets or whatever. That's up to every citizen to make that decision. But I think it's important to be informed. And our role is really to bring this information to the public and say, here's a tool that is very powerful in the hands of that regime. That's something we didn't know. And potentially it's very harmful. And then it's up to everyone to take their own responsibilities, and we're also naming the companies. I think that was something very important to us and to our partners.
Alexander Abdelila, your investigation available on the website of Forbidden Stories. So many thanks for speaking with us here on France 24.
Thanks for having me.